Welcome to the CompTIA A+ Prepcast presented by baremetalcyber.com. Windows computers can be organized into either a workgroup or a domain, depending on the environment in which they operate. These groupings define how systems interact, how access is controlled, and how user authentication works across the network. Workgroups are designed for smaller networks, while domains are built for larger, centrally managed environments. The A+ Core 2 exam expects you to understand both models, how they are structured, what their technical differences are, and when each should be used in support or deployment scenarios. A workgroup is a peer-to-peer network model where each system is responsible for managing its own resources. There is no central authority, and each computer stores its own user accounts and settings. Access to shared folders or printers is granted based on local permissions. This model is ideal for small offices, homes, or environments with fewer than 10 computers. Because no central server is involved, setup is simpler but more time-consuming when managing multiple devices. Any administrative task must be repeated on each system individually. Domains are built around centralized control, using Windows Server and Active Directory. In a domain, users log in using domain credentials, which are stored on a server called a domain controller. Devices connected to the domain are configured using domain-based policies, which enforce consistent security settings, user rights, and software behavior. Domains are scalable and can support thousands of devices across multiple physical locations. Centralized control makes them ideal for enterprises, educational institutions, and government environments. One of the major differences between workgroups and domains is how user authentication is handled. In a workgroup, user accounts exist only on the local machine. That means a technician must create and manage a separate account on each computer for each user. In a domain, the user can log in from any domain-joined computer using the same credentials. This supports roaming profiles and consistent access across multiple systems. In real-world environments, this is especially helpful when users need to move between workstations or access shared drives across departments. Workgroups are designed for small networks and have limited scalability. While technically a workgroup can include dozens of devices, it becomes inefficient to manage at scale. Domains, on the other hand, are built to handle large deployments with thousands of users and devices. Domains allow for automation, scripting, and centralized logging, which are all critical for enterprise-level efficiency. The A+ exam may ask how many systems are appropriate for a workgroup setup, or when a domain becomes necessary based on network size. Sharing resources like printers or files is another key area where these two models differ. In a workgroup, resource sharing is done using local permissions. You must set sharing settings and access rights on each individual machine. In a domain, resources can be shared through group membership. Domain administrators assign users to groups, and those groups are granted access to network shares and devices. This makes management far easier and reduces the risk of misconfiguration. Centralized permission control also supports audit tracking and access control policies. Security and policy management are more advanced in domain environments. Domains use group policy to apply configuration settings across all devices. This includes password policies, software restrictions, screen lock timers, and dozens of other rules. In a workgroup, each machine must be configured manually, which is not practical in larger environments. Domain administrators can enforce security standards remotely and ensure that all systems remain compliant with organizational requirements. Group policy enforcement is a major benefit of domain-based networking. Joining a computer to a workgroup is a straightforward process. You begin by accessing the System Settings panel. From there, select Rename this PC and then choose the option to join a workgroup. You enter the workgroup name, apply the changes, and restart the system for the configuration to take effect. The same name must be entered on other systems to establish the grouping. This process is simple, but requires manual setup of user accounts and shared resource access. Joining a domain involves slightly more steps. You will need to enter the fully qualified domain name, such as corp.company.local, and provide valid domain credentials. This is done either through System Settings or through the Accounts section under Access Work or School. The system will contact the domain controller to verify the credentials and complete the join process. After a successful join and restart, the user can log in using their domain username and password, and the system will receive domain policies automatically. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Setting up a domain requires several infrastructure components. The most important is a Windows server configured with the Active Directory Domain Services role. This server acts as the domain controller and handles all authentication requests from domain-joined systems. Domain Name System, or DNS, must also be configured correctly. Each system joining the domain must use the domain controller as its primary DNS server so it can locate the domain during the join process. If this is misconfigured, domain joining will fail, even if other settings appear correct. Domains offer significant benefits when it comes to managing user accounts. Password policies, lockout thresholds, and multi-factor authentication can be configured once and applied across all users. This centralized approach reduces administrative overhead and increases security. If a user leaves the organization, their account can be disabled or deleted remotely. These changes take effect immediately, preventing unauthorized access. Domains also support login scripts, roaming profiles, and password expiration policies, key features for scalable and secure user management. Device management also becomes much easier in a domain environment. Administrators can push software updates, configure system settings, and deploy security patches using tools like Group Policy or Microsoft Intune. Logs from individual systems can be collected centrally for analysis. Remote desktop access and remote wiping are also supported features. In environments where dozens or hundreds of machines need identical configuration, centralized device management saves significant time and prevents errors caused by manual setup. To ensure high availability and redundancy, most domains include more than one domain controller. This design allows users to authenticate even if one server fails. Backup domain controllers synchronize with the primary controller and automatically take over when needed. This failover process is seamless to the end user and essential in enterprise environments. Without this redundancy, a single server failure could lock out every user on the network. The A+ exam may ask how redundancy supports business continuity in domain structures. A common issue technicians encounter is a failed attempt to join a domain. This often results from DNS misconfiguration, which prevents the system from locating the domain controller. Another cause is time mismatch. Windows requires that the system clock be within 5 minutes of the domain controller's time. If the clocks are not synchronized, the join will fail. The fix typically involves pointing the client to the correct DNS server, verifying network connectivity, and ensuring the time and date match. After correcting these, the domain join usually succeeds. Workgroups are still appropriate in some environments. Small offices, home networks, or labs with fewer than 10 devices may not require the complexity of a domain. These systems typically use local accounts, and the effort to manage a domain outweighs the benefits. In these setups, technicians configure user access manually and set up sharing permissions on a case-by-case basis. Although less secure and harder to scale, workgroups are simple to configure and require no server hardware or dedicated management tools. Domains are recommended in any environment that has centralized information technology control. This includes businesses, schools, and government agencies. Domains enable uniform enforcement of policies, access control, software deployment, and monitoring. Systems in a domain benefit from consistency, audit trails, and layered security models. Once set up, domains reduce long-term support costs and improve efficiency. Any organization with more than a few users or devices should strongly consider using a domain-based structure. Modern networks may use a hybrid model known as Azure Active Directory Join. This configuration combines traditional on-premises domain control with cloud-based identity and management services. It is commonly used by organizations transitioning to the cloud or managing a remote workforce. Azure AD Join allows systems to authenticate using cloud credentials while still applying policies and accessing local resources when needed. The A+ exam may mention Azure Active Directory as a modern evolution of traditional domain models. System discoverability also differs between workgroups and domains. In a workgroup, devices must be discovered manually by hostname or IP address. There is no centralized index of available systems, and browsing network devices is limited. In a domain, systems can be automatically discovered and listed based on their organizational unit and assigned policies. This improves workflow efficiency, particularly for administrators managing large environments with hundreds of computers or printers. To summarize, workgroups and domains represent two different approaches to managing Windows systems. Workgroups offer simplicity and are best for small, local environments with minimal administrative needs. Domains provide centralized control, scalability, and advanced security options for organizations with larger infrastructures. Understanding the technical differences, configuration steps, and appropriate use cases for each is essential for A+ certification and professional support roles. You will likely encounter both in real-world IT work and must be prepared to support either one effectively. Thank you for listening. Please visit baremetalcyber.com for more cybersecurity information, podcasts, books, and more.